Hey y'all, welcome back to another episode of Queens Vantage Podcast. Today is a pretty special episode for me. I had some requests. I do listen to the requests. I listen to y'all when y'all ask. And a few of you had asked for me to do an interview on my own podcast. So today, I'm so fortunate and blessed to sit down with Mya Whittaker, who is the executive director of the Bay Area Urban Debate League, but also a mentee of mine. Mya, welcome to Queens Vantage Podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Good. I'm excited to have you. So, listen, again, I'm handing the throne over as I did in my last podcast. The throne now belongs to Mya. Mya's going to interview me, and I'm going to answer all questions as accurately and honestly as possible.
Let's do this.
Let's get into it.
So let's kick us off. How do you manage to balance your primary job with your passion projects like podcasting, hosting, and entertaining?
How do I balance it all? My truth is I don't. I've learned to find the compromise, and that is my answer. I have to have, of course, great time management skills, and I'll give some examples of that. But I've had to find the compromise. Today was like one of those days for me where I'm meeting heavy. I also have like a therapy appointment. I have my son at home. I need to cook dinner, carve a pumpkin. And so I have to find a compromise. And so what I tend to do is I write out a schedule for myself, or I look at my calendar the night before. I try not to live too far in the future because that just makes me chaotic and anxious. And so I try to live more in my present time. So I look at my calendar at night, and I'm getting better at living by my calendar because I'm realizing now things fall off. So if I say, hey, I'm going to do that at 12 o'clock and I don't put it on my calendar, it's not going to happen just because there's so many other things happening in my life. And so now I have to live religiously by my calendar. It's just everything. I mean, even if it's take a breath, if it's take a walk, if it's take a nap, I put it on my calendar.
Same. If I don't have a to-do list, things get chaotic. And like you shared, we have children, so it wrinkles over to the kids and their impact as well. Your work to align giving with an equity-focused lens. Could you share a specific example of how you guide a donor or people in your professional work and to think of beyond traditional giving and truly address systemic barriers? I know you and I talk a lot about, as I'm an executive director, just things that nonprofits don't see and how we can sometimes be so closed-minded, and you give a lot of great advice. So shout out to anybody that's looking for some advice on a nonprofit. But from your lens in the philanthropic world, what is that? How do you give advice?
Yeah, so I feel like that's a couple questions that I want to like dissect a little bit
you're
there.
Busy.
No, it's good. It's good. Okay, so a conversation that I would have with a client or a donor would look different than I was having with an organization, and I want to make sure that with a client, it's a lot about building their trust, right? So they need to, in order for me to advise them or have influence over their giving, they need to trust me. And so with that, I need to be presenting the best options possible into where they could give. What we do know about communities of color, that we face so many systemic barriers and challenges, and we don't always have the resource and tools. And so if I'm presenting you to a client, or if I'm having a conversation with a client about your organization, then you can guarantee I've had a real honest conversation, and you and I have had those. And because I want to present the best product to them. And so sometimes with a nonprofit, it's about having uncomfortable conversations.
Yes.
And saying, hey, listen, if you really want to do better in your community and serve your community and get the philanthropic dollars into your community, then here are some things I'm going to need. I need you to maybe tidy up a little bit around the office, whatever. Or professional, be prepared for the conversation. Think about the questions that we're going to ask, but think about the questions that may come up. And so that's the conversation that I'll have with a nonprofit. With a client, it's great for clients. Look, so clients tend to give to organizations that they trust. And so I try to give the full picture of the community. I come from the community. I come from I survived off of philanthropy. I was a person that went to the Boys and Girls Club. And the Boys and Girls Club, in many ways, like really steered my ship in how my life would go, because it put me in organized like sports or dances, so that it kept me off the streets doing things that maybe sometimes opportunities that maybe some of my peers were being engaged in, or just awareness around drugs or safe sex. I learned all of that at the Boys and Girls Club. So if I'm talking to a donor and I can give them that lived experience, but also say like, here's a trusted organization and I know this because I actually talk to them, I know them, and I know what this community needs. It's just like, it's the bread and butter. So.
Definitely a resource where you're coming from. Now running your own business with Queens Vantage, how do you see those skills like transfer over into running your own business? How do you align yourself?
Yeah, it's interesting because right now we live in a season where everybody wants to be an entrepreneur. And I don't think many people understand what it takes to be an entrepreneur. So my business for the first 3 years was funded by my own salary, right? So I didn't choose a business that would generate income right away. It's now generating an income. And so I think a lot of people don't understand the sacrifice that it takes, the hard work, the sleepless nights, the moments that when you really want to give up, but you have to keep going. And I think that's what the 9-to-5 has taught me.
Yes.
The 9-to-5, I mean, there are challenges that come up and it's like, what is the solution for it? I'm in a very privileged, but also a really important position where we're moving money from philanthropic assets into community. And that's not always easy.
Yes.
So I think it's taught me some grit. It's taught me consistency. It's taught me time management because you can't do everything all at once. It's taught me organization. And it's also, I think it really tightened my skills, my writing, my reading, my researching skills. And I think you need a lot of that in entrepreneur. I'm really still building. And so I'm now with the, getting ready to work with the L3 perspective on how to do kind of all the back end administrative, but big thinking that I don't really have the capacity for because I still work full time.
Well, it just sounds like you're always growing. And I think that sometimes in leadership roles, people lack that repouring into themselves to know, like, maybe you could be enhancing this or scaling this better. So it's reaffirming to hear that you're constantly open to it, because I also feel like sometimes people are not even open to that change. Yeah. So how do you remain flexible in business and, as you said, juggling all these things? How are you personally taking care of yourself to remain flexible like that?
Yeah. Well, the thing is knowing that you don't have all the answers. The first things first is I don't have all the answers, and I don't want to pretend like I have all the answers. Get me to the people that have the answers, and that's who I want to partner with. I don't know it all, right? I'm still learning and I'm growing both in my 9-to-5. I'm growing as an entrepreneur. I'm growing as a person. And I think if I believe that everything stops within me, then that's where I stop. So I have to be open to criticism. I have to be open to feedback. And that's just where I'm in my place. I wouldn't be here today if people hadn't given me feedback along the way.
You started your career studying psychology. How does that background in understanding human behavior inform the way you build trust and relationships?
Yes. Well, we're all on a human experience. And that's the first thing that I learned when I went to school. When I went over to Dominican University, I transferred from College of Marin and started studying human behavior. It was realizing that everybody's on a human journey. And there's a basis in which we all operate, but there's things that affect us along the way that kind of change those different trajectories. And so for me, whenever I sit down with a client or I sit down if I'm with a coach, with someone I'm coaching or I'm mentoring, I understand that they're on their own human journey and it's going to look differently. And I don't try to give advice based on what I think you should be doing. I'll give advice based on where you say you are and where you want to go.
Right, which is very practical. So that leads me into what inspired you to start Queens Vantage and move into a new career, even as a podcaster. That's so, as you said, it was a slow growth, but of all the things you could be spending your time on, what made you go into podcasting and start really vocalizing?
Yeah, so podcasting started for me as a woman who had a lot of uncertainty in my life. And I was, I had children really early. Let's start there. So I had children early. I was 19 years old and I was pregnant with my first child. Then I got married really early. And so I did a lot of things in life without knowing who I was or even growing into the space of who I was becoming. And so I had to figure a lot out while I still had responsibilities. And so when you fast forward to now, I've been through a lot. I've learned a lot. I'm still growing. I'm still in a place of growing. I think healing is not a destination. It's a journey. And there's different facets of it. And I wanted to share parts of my own healing journey and share others' stories because I believe that when we come together, I think there's just more power in that. And to be able to tell my story and to tell the stories of others. Right. I never really thought that I was going to be a podcaster. Honestly, I love I love this, but I mean, there's so much work behind it. It's like, I'm always asking God, do you still want me to do this? But it was really for me about if I could get here, if that little girl that grew up in poverty could get to where she is today, you can too.
Absolutely. That speaks truth to power. I mean, so many, not even just mothers, but young women are still trying to figure it out. And I think with social media expediting and adultifying that experience, it feels good and like a breath of fresh air for somebody to say, you're on your own journey and it's going to look a lot different because that's what was crafted for you. That's really reaffirming to where we all are, I would say. So in your episode, Young Motherhood Through the Eyes of Our Children, what prompted you to tackle this topic from such a unique perspective? I know you shared that you were also a young mother. And then the next question would be, what was the most surprising thing you've learned from that conversation as it's settled down now?
Yeah. So becoming a young mother, and there's a stigma on it, right? And I'll say the first kind of introduction I remember into becoming like an independent person was when I was pregnant with my child. My mother told me to go get on welfare. And I don't knock anyone who has to do that. But I remember I'm kind of like one of those deep thinkers. And so I kept thinking like, I know that my life is not meant to be here. Like I feel like there's just something great out there for me. And I refused to do it. I refused to go and get on public assistance because when I asked them, well, how much will I be getting a month? And they were like, I can't remember at the time, but let's just say it was like $300 for you and your child. And I was working at Macy's and I was making like $400 or $500 a week. And so I realized that there was a part of the system that keeps us in poverty. And there was another part of the system that really lied to us and told us that we couldn't be more than what was given to us. And I wanted to break that cycle. So I refused. I worked all the way up until almost the day that I had my first son. And I went back to work after a C-section. I went back to work for, I think 4 weeks later, which was like kind of illegal. I wasn't supposed to, but they offered me a permanent position at this company. And I worked so hard to not become a statistic. And I think that really played a part into like the mother that I am today. And like now having 2 kids, coming from a family where not many people go to college, having 2 people go to college. I feel like there was another part of that question that I'm missing. The first part.
It's okay. No problem. I think we were just going into, I want to continue while you're on that before I jump into that second part of the conversation. I don't want to lose you in thought. You spoke about how like just paid family leave, even in the time of you having a child, I can relate to, and I'm sure many other Black women can. I too had a C-section and returned to work about a week later. And I don't think that that's okay. And I think sometimes our mindset is trained that, hey, you got out there and made it happen. But as we get older and reflect back of like, that's not okay.
Yeah, it wasn't okay then. It's not okay now. I am so thankful for where I am today because, I work a job where I think I took like 3 months off from maternity leave. And then in addition to that, they allowed me to take my sick and I think it was like some sick time or vacation time that accumulated way more time than I had ever had. And I had to live and I learned. I grew up around hustlers. I'm a hustler. I'm like, I'm going to get it by all means necessary. But, as a woman now that's more mature and I'm looking back, well, how can I prevent other women from having to go through that? I mean, the system wasn't really designed for us to succeed. And so many of us have to look back. And even if we can't change it for ourselves, we can change it for others.
No, and that's really important. I mean, you spoke about your sons going to college, and shout out to the babies.
Thank you.
Congratulations. I know that's not easy. I too have a son. So I want to just speak to that of how does it feel to see on the other end of being pregnant and probably nervous and getting all this advice and see how your young men take this in, pride to be your child and go to college now.
Yeah. To go from ashamed and scared to I'm so proud. I'm proud of my sons, but I'm also proud of myself because I was determined. Every conversation that I had with my kids from the moment that they could understand was when you go to college. I've never had a if you go to college conversation. I've been throwing college birthday parties. Like we had an Oregon University and a Stanford birthday party for my oldest and my middle son who are now in college. And to see their growth, but also see myself evolve as a mother over time and really beat the odds. And I'm just saying to any woman out there, you can beat the odds. Like, with or without a person in your life and luckily my kid's father, was there. I was married to their father, but with or without, you can succeed. And so will your children.
So I'm going to jump into that second part is, what was the most surprising thing you've learned from that conversation? I'm curious to see how the boys felt getting that on, live, and what has that been like in your household with the babies?
So the biggest surprise, you know what? Nothing really surprises me these days. I just think I'm not a person that doesn't believe that something isn't possible. So it's not a surprise for me because if 5 years ago I said I'm buying a house. I was going through a divorce. I was depressed. I was sad. I was embarrassed. I was walking in shame. Like I was walking, that walk of shame when it's like you're walking away from your kid's father. But I was so determined. Like I knew that I was destined to have a home for my kids and set a foundation. I knew that my kids were destined for college. And even when moments when there was a situation where we couldn't pay for my son's college and he had to take a break and being like, you know what? I have another son coming to college. I need to get this one back in college. And talk about prayer. I started praying. I started fasting. I was on my knees. I was crying out to God. And now my son is on a full scholarship at Bellevue University. And it didn't. Yes. And my thing is, I think I'm not surprised, but the greatest thing about God is even what I had planned is not it. We got him to Northern Arizona University.
Imagine what was coming. His plan for you was already in wheels. You couldn't even imagine where it was.
Couldn't imagine. I remember saying to God, it was like January, and I said to God, this a big ass. It's a big ass, God. Like I'm like giving God the prerequisite for what I'm about to say.
Not you making deals with him of like he don't know.
Right.
Like sweetie, I got to talk to you about this bill. Like he don't know.
But I said to God, I need my son's school 100% paid for. Because now I have this other kid and I need to help him. And I need to make sure that I'm able to pay for his college. Well, I'm a single mom. How do you do it all? God does it all. And I remember praying, and I remember sending my son a list of scholarships and saying, hey, I need you to apply for these. And he started, and one was his job, and he ended up going to his job, and he applied for the scholarship, and now he's going to school. Books and tuition completely paid for. So I'm never really surprised because God always works things out. He always has in my life. So I'm more or less about like, God, what's next?
If anything, I hear you, what trickled down was to have faith and also teaching and reaffirming your sons of throw your hat in the ring.
Yes.
And I think that that's just a skill set. It sounds like you've learned of, hey, don't go to this program. Instead, continue to throw your hat in these rings of opportunity, which me and you both can speak to of like, that is how you get in these spaces to network with the right people. And so it's really good to hear about you and the boys, like making a plan, coming up with something, and the follow through and the reward was bigger than anybody could have imagined. Because that's the prayer, that's the fun of the joy of the roller coaster. So I'm
faith without works is dead. Period.
Absolutely, we know it. Okay, so on this episode, you said in the weight we carry, dismantling the strong Black woman narrative is incredibly powerful. How did your experience with that narrative inform your decision to discuss it? And what do you hope listeners would take away from that episode?
Yes. So it's so funny. I don't know if Cam is in the room right now, but let me just tell you, the strong Black woman is upon me, but I am learning. I'm still learning. So I'm not there. I'm still learning to dismantle it. I still have to remind myself. And so one of my podcast producers, whenever, we're sitting down here to do a podcast, and so simple as just moving my microphone, I want to move my microphone. And he's like, today ain't the day to be a strong Black woman. A constant reminder of like how I'm showing up in the world and where I want to go. And today I said, Cam, I need you to move my mic, or, so I'm still dismantling it, but I thought it was so important because it's killing us. And that's what the therapist on the podcast was sharing, was that like the number one killer in Black women or just people alone is heart disease. People are dropping dead. We saw the woman who, I think she was a chef, and she was just working, and she took a break and she went to sleep and she never awakened. Or there was a newscaster that didn't wake up from her sleep. And I think as people, we're hard workers. As Black women, I think sometimes we work 10 times as hard. And I'm only, listen, if y'all don't believe it, then you can, you can test what I'm saying. But we work really hard because we try not to be what was.
Right.
And we're teaching, we're coaching, we're parenting, we're friending, we're relationshiping, so we're all these different things. And I think as Black women, like I say, I'm going to speak for myself as a woman, as a Black woman, is that we try to be everything to everyone. And it's just not possible. It's just not real. And so I'm trying to shift my own mindset into how can I be here for my grandchildren? How can I be here for my great grandchildren? We don't see that. Like, I have no grandparents, no living grandparents. So my children have no living
grandparents.
Yeah, right. So my children also have no living, well, except for on their dad's side, their grandparents are alive. But on my side, you know, their ancestry is already, their grandparents are gone. I don't want to be that. Like, I want to live a long, thriving, healthy life so that I can hold my grandchildren and be here for them. I can't do that if I'm trying to hold on to the strong Black woman narrative. And so even now, I'm like, I just had a chandelier that was it was just put in my room, installed in my room, and I for a moment was going to learn how to paint my ceiling because when you change things out, you have to paint. And I'm like, I really don't want to do that. And so much of my life was always doing all the things that I didn't want to do because I had to. No, I'm on Thumbtack and I'm hiring someone now. So again, it's just like letting go of feeling like I got to be everything. I don't have to be everything. I'm cutting that narrative. If you want to be everything for everyone, you do that, and there's no judgment. But for me, I'm going to find moments that either I hire help, whether it's my housekeeper, whether it's a chef, whatever it is, so that I can take time to myself and heal myself. So I did a fast for 72 hours, and it was one of the hardest things I've ever done. Truly. It was like the hardest thing that I ever done.
I can imagine. Yes.
But my body felt so restored, and all I could do during that fast was rest. I still was working every day, but I would get up, I would work, I would drink water because I was only doing water, and all I could do was rest. And that was the first time I think in my life that I had truly rested. You know, so
no, that means a lot of like, what does that mean for the Black woman to really sit in her rest? Even hearing you speak about the trope of Black women, like at least my lineage, that Alzheimer's runs in my family. So hearing you say of like the stress, we live in California, we're in one of the highest places uniquely in the Bay Area, and you're a mother carrying that weight. If we don't start identifying some of those factors, we normalize it. And that's not normal. As you speak to traveling and things like that, when I went to Chicago, one of the things the men pointed out to me was like, girl, you racing to this door. You know somebody in here? Let me open the door. And it was really like, why am I trying to make sure I get this door open? Like reflection on pause for a second. And I think that as you're explaining, like, we don't get that space, or you are not even creating your own space to say, pause for a second.
Yeah.
What does that look like to really sit comfortably with yourself and know you don't have to do that. You don't have to be here. You don't have to make sure this. If it happens, if it falls, if it drops, how does that impact you? It doesn't matter.
Right.
Like, I can just see the glow in you now of where we met. Like I said, as her mentee, we've been through some trenches of her just giving me that advice of the real life, what I learned and why you cannot step in this mud.
Yeah.
Is there any other advice before we move on from the Black woman trope that you've learned that you really feel is important to get on wax for people?
Yeah. I think to understand the difference between evolution and being fake. Because this is one of the things that people try to attack for me. So I've had someone say to me, well, you don't talk to them like you talk to the people at work, right?
I have to hold my tongue too, girl. Like the comparison.
Like, first of all, like, it ain't that serious over here. And you don't sign my check. And my livelihood is at the utmost importance for me because I have people who depend on me. I depend on me.
I take it serious.
So no, I'm not going to talk to people at work the way that I talk to you, right? And I think we try to hold on to this narrative of being real, but is being real holding you back, right? Because I don't think evolving and becoming better is not being real. Jay-Z says it the best. We didn't come this far to be the same.
No, how could you?
So if you knew me from the crest and you knew that I would snatch you out the car, but you said something to me now and I just walked away, no, that's evolution.
Yeah.
That's called evolving. That's called having something to live for. When you knew me 20 years ago or 25 years ago, I didn't have much to live for. You know, I was just there. I was existing. Now I'm living. So you're not going to get the same person. I am not who I was. And I'm not going to go back to it. I'm not going to let anybody bring me back to it. So I think for Black women to realize, evolve. Like if you got a 6-figure job and they're telling you that your red, long fingernails are too much for the job, cut the nails or quit the job. You got 2 choices there.
Right.
But I'm gonna tell you this, I'm about my bag. So if
make a choice that reflects what you really want.
If it's about my bag, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do it within reason. Like, I'm never going to do anything that dishonors myself or dishonors God. But I'm going to, hey, if that's too much for here and you sign my check, the nails got to go. The eyelashes got to go. Whatever it is.
Definitely knowing your performance. I hear you saying of like being okay when it's time to perform, but also knowing who Ebony is and what compromise you're willing to make. I think that people need to do that for themselves. And I'm proud of you for doing that work of hearing you say yes, no, yes, no. And it's not it doesn't have to be a fight. That's what people are missing. I feel the calmness of like, there's no fight in who I am. And, you know, the nails don't change me. I still go get in the same car and drive home. Right. Like, I still get to go home.
And it's nice.
Like, so as you guys can see, like, I appreciate the advice because sometimes people get into these positions and they forget the young ones watching are not being given that grace, especially with the social media. I would say that leads me into my next question with you. Yeah. How do you make sure you're keeping that social media marketing brand presence right, especially if as a Black woman and understanding what's some strategy you could give to some of them out there that are like, you know, how should you be presenting yourself?
Yeah, I say present yourself where you see your life going. If let's use Meg Thee Stallion as an example. She has a brand that's built on sexuality, on sexiness, you know, on love.
That's a clean way.
Love.
Okay.
And she's successful at what she does. And I don't think she ever tries to pretend to be something that she's not. That's not my brand. My brand is to help people become the best versions of themselves. And then the second part of that is I am an advisor who advises wealthy families and individuals where to give their strategic dollars, their strategic philanthropic assets. So my brand can't be built on that, right? And so if you're a social media influencer, we all have a presence. We all have a brand. Know what yours is, and then that's what your output should be. Who's your target audience? We may have crossover in audiences, but it may not be exactly the same. So I just try to be true to who I am. I never post what I'm going through, but I will always talk about my testimony. I don't think everybody needs to know that I'm having a bad day. I don't think everybody cares to know that I'm having a bad day. But when I find learning from what I went through, was there growth? Was there something that I could share that maybe would help someone else or steer someone else's ship? Then that's what I'm going to share. That's just who I am.
Which is the positive part of using social media the correct way, I would say, and what you've learned. So yeah, clean that social media up. Who are you trying to attract and why? Once they get here, how are you holding them to what you want from them? My next question, which will wrap up my questions for today, what's next for Queens Vantage? What's some episodes we could be looking out for of like, what are your topics of mind?
Yes. Okay, I'm excited to share. So I was interviewed on another podcast called Unapologetically Speaking, and I talked about Queens Vantage really morphing itself into a daytime talk show.
Oh, wow. Oh, I'm nervous for you. See how my face went like, look, you can do it. I already know you got the connection. So it's, oh boy.
Yeah. So that's what that is like the goal. That is my hope. That's my aspiration over Queens Vantage Podcast. But also just that more people tune in and feel like their lives are changed every time they hear a conversation on my platform. But I have 2 major interviews that are coming up that are actually additions. So this is actually the close of Queens Vantage season 3. But thank you.
No, clap for that. Sit in that for a moment. That's a lot of hard work along with what you do. Like, congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, it's crazy to even think that I'm on season 3 of Queens Vantage Podcast, and this started in my living room. And now I have Damola, who's a violinist, who is nationally known and just, I mean, when I say on fire on social media, on fire on YouTube, and has done some incredible news interviews, I have him coming on my podcast, and I feel so fortunate and so blessed, and that like God is presenting these different opportunities. In addition to that, Queens Vantage as the host, and that's going outside of just these walls, has Zuri Soul coming onto the podcast for an interview. And then in addition to that, I will be hosting for her Christmas in Egypt show at Yoshi's.
Oh, wow. So I'll be back at the Yoshi's with you.
Yes,
that was
and
a lot
thank you
of fun.
for coming out.
Of course. How else do we show up if you're not physically there? Then send the dollars. That's how y'all support. Like, no, that was amazing to be at Yoshi's. Live music, You're
you.
hosting. Like I said on my post, even expanding the brand is not easy. So for you to even host something like that consistently speaks to your strength and your ability to form into what you want. And that's really cool to see and support.
Thank
so,
you.
No.
Yeah. So actually now I want to go back to when you talked about surprises. I think this was the surprise for me, the hosting at Yoshi's and hosting for KP Entertainment Connections, because I saw my host was like the host of Queens Vantage Podcast. And it was amazing to me to see how God had this door open for me that I did not see.
Again, you could not see.
I could not see
what was
it.
on that end, but you knew something and walking in that direction.
But sticking to the plan, like God told me every day to show up, every month to keep going, every month to continue to invest in myself and into my brand, into my business. And the fact that door opened and is now what truly has monetized Queens Vantage Podcast. And from that birth, like my website, check it out, queensvantagepodcast.com, where I have merchandise that I've launched and I have a journal that's launching. And it's got me to do some bigger thinking. And so now I think next year, as I'm looking ahead, is really to really plan out the strategy.
I can see that, and I'm so happy to be a part of watching it grow and develop. You're a very smart woman, and I'm happy that you have decided to share your seeds of knowledge and growth in different ways, from personal to professional, with women like myself. I know I like to tune in every week, so make sure y'all checking it out. And one of the things I just would like to highlight, when we did first meet, one of the things you did speak about was Queens Vantage and this podcast that you were working on. So to see this dream really come full circle, and even the advice you gave me then of like, I really needed to do better and sharpen up as an executive, Black woman to Black woman in this role, was really affirming to me, empowering. So I want you to continue to know, like, we need voices like you in spaces that break that stereotype and systems, but also keep it real and hold our next generation accountable for what to expect, especially giving them the strategy. Like we said, we live in the Bay, so it's not easy, but being aware that you can make it easy is really important. So thank you for all of us. I appreciate interviewing you today.
And just to say, that meeting started with my client.
See, again, like,
it was my client who came to the meeting, and you too, because you're the executive director of the organization. And it was like, once, I was like, no, let's have a conversation, because I saw something in you.
I appreciate that.
I saw something in you, and I'm like, whatever I can do to help this woman become the best version of herself, like, God, give me the words.
I appreciate that, because
you wanted it. So let me apply you, because you wanted it. You continue. You reached out, and now you send me agenda items. You're like, okay, girl, this is the day we're meeting, and here's my agenda. Here are the things that I want to discuss. You wanted it. So.
I appreciate that. No, it's good to be in leadership roles, and like I said, having advice, immediately somebody pull you to the side, like, let's talk. The way I tell my staff is, you don't want to go into these spaces bleeding on the people. You want to be the best person you can be. And until you address the bleeding, the word vomit, the inappropriate stuff that's coming up, it's going to make it real harder. So it's good to have people that are like, take a break. I can see your greatness, but I also know we need to polish some of this off. You cannot come into this like that. And I could just see it in my development. Like I said, seeing Queens Vantage go in all the spaces you're going is like, I just can't wait for what's next. I can't wait to see the talk show and be frontline and waving at the people. So it's coming.
Thank you. It's coming. And thank you so much for, this interview really was personal for me. It's really special. So I wanted someone that has been a part of my journey, that not just appreciates it, but like also for you. When I said, do your research, like, I don't want you to come in here and ask me questions based on what I'm telling you to ask. What do you know about me? What do you see about me? And I wanted to be transparent and really live in that space of authenticity on and off the camera.
You do it every time. That's why I'm like, no, I hope this satisfied your listeners' questions. I'd love to be back if you want to do a part 2 anytime, because I think that people just miss out on, you're a person and you're growing too. And this takes a lot of work, and the more that they help and you're growing, we can only reach the stars, baby.
Thank you. So listen, y'all. Another episode of Queens Vantage Podcast. This is my girl, Mya Whittaker. Like I said, she's the executive director of the Bay Area Urban Debate League. Listen, if you're thinking about doing some end-of-year giving and you want to support an organization that's doing incredible work with the youth, check out Urban Debate League. Mya, what's the website?
Please check out www.baudl.org. We do great work across the Bay Area. We're at 16 schools. 300 kids served a year, and we're teaching them about debate, which, as you can see, the skills I have to even interview Ebony has really transferred over into what I'm able to do. So definitely support our Bay Area babies. They deserve it.
Yes. Mya, thank you so much for coming on Queens Vantage Podcast. Listeners, I hope that you've enjoyed the podcast. I hope that you've learned something new about me. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram, on Facebook, and we're also on YouTube, of course. So hit that subscribe button, hit notify so that every time I launch an episode, you're already up to date with it. Leave us a comment. Let us know your thoughts. We'll see you next time.